Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Look, if you're someone who works incredibly hard, you give it your absolute all during the week, and you just desperately look forward to your downtime, but somehow you still find yourself waking up completely exhausted when Monday morning rolls around, well, you are in exactly the right place. Seriously, think about that specific, super frustrating feeling. I mean, you've just had a full 48 hours entirely to yourself. Yet Monday hits, the alarm goes off, and you feel just as burned out as you did on Friday afternoon. It honestly feels like a wasted weekend, right? Well, today, we are unpacking a truly transformative concept from Steve Chandler's book, 100 Ways to Motivate Yourself. Specifically, we're zooming in on chapter 46, which introduces this brilliant framework that is going to fundamentally change how you view your free time. It's really designed to help you banish that weekend burnout for good. And the whole thing revolves around one core idea: the vitality of active relaxation. Okay, let's dive into this.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the relaxation trap. Second, active versus passive relaxation. Third, the genius secret. Fourth, the unexpected gaming epiphany. And fifth, becoming a player.
All right, let's kick things off with section 1, the relaxation trap.
So I really want you to ask yourself this question right now. Why are we still tired after relaxing? Think about your typical weekend, or maybe just your average evening after a long, genuinely grueling day at work. You get home, you sit down, you try to unwind. Maybe you spend 3 hours just mindlessly scrolling on your phone, or you binge watch a television show until 2 in the morning. You have hours and hours of doing absolutely nothing, right? You're making zero demands of yourself. And yet, the fatigue just doesn't lift. The burnout totally remains. You wake up the next day, and the psychological frustration of feeling just as exhausted as before is, well, it's overwhelming. So why is that? According to our source material, the answer lies entirely in how we're actually choosing to spend that precious downtime.
You see, the real culprit for this lingering exhaustion is what Chandler identifies as passive relaxation. We rent mindless movies, we read pulp fiction, or we turn to drinking, smoking, and overeating. Now, what's the common denominator of all these habits? It's the goal of total numbness. When we feel totally overwhelmed by the demands of our week, society basically teaches us that shutting down completely is the only true way to rest. We instinctively try to deaden the mind. We literally think that turning off our cognitive functions, just flipping that internal switch to off, is the textbook definition of recovering from stress. We try to escape our daily pressures by entirely unplugging the machine. But here is the massive, tragic flaw of that passive approach. Trying to deaden the mind, it doesn't actually rejuvenate us at all. It leaves us feeling foggy, it leaves us feeling bloated, and honestly, worst of all, it fundamentally dulls our spirit. By completely turning our brains off, we actually make it incredibly difficult to come back to consciousness when we need to. Think about that really heavy feeling of trying to shake off the lethargy after a weekend of totally passive behavior. It's exactly like trying to restart a stalled engine on a freezing cold morning. It grinds, it sputters, and it just takes an immense amount of energy just to get it turning again. That passive lethargy makes tackling our actual lives so much harder than it needs to be. So let's move on and see how this builds into the core alternative. Section 2, active versus passive relaxation.
What's absolutely fascinating here is the stark contrast between these two completely different approaches to our free time. Passive relaxation is all about deadening the mind, right? Leaving it completely dormant and covered in cobwebs. But the alternative, active relaxation, is electrifying. The absolute key phrase to remember here is interacting with the unexpected. Instead of a heavy, dulling shutdown, active relaxation requires vibrant responsiveness. It requires you to be engaged, to be present, and to dynamically react to new stimuli. It's the complete opposite of numb.
So let's actually define it. Active relaxation is a brain-challenging pursuit. It refreshes and restores the mind by keeping it flexible, toned, and responsive to the unexpected. Think of your mind exactly like a muscle. If you just lay completely dormant on the couch for 2 days straight, your physical body gets stiff, achy, and weak. Well, the exact same thing happens to your intellect. Letting your brain lay dormant makes it stiffen up. But if you keep it toned and flexible through light, really engaging exercise, it stays healthy and agile. Active pursuits actually increase your personal creativity and your overall intellectual motivation. They keep you sharp. So what does this actually look like in everyday practice? It involves pursuits like playing video or computer games, playing cards, working in the garden, walking the dog, or maybe playing chess. Notice how deeply engaging these all are. Whether you're feeling the soil and physically pulling weeds out in the garden, or you're plotting your next strategic move in a really tense game of chess, Or maybe you're testing your hand-eye coordination and reflexes in a digital world. Your mind is being forced to respond. You are actively interacting with the unexpected. These sensory and tactical experiences, they keep your brain wonderfully toned for thinking rather than just shutting it down.
Moving right along to Section 3, the genius secret. And this brilliantly illustrates that the greatest thinkers throughout history have actually utilized this exact active strategy for a very long time. Take Winston Churchill, for example. He used to paint to relax. Albert Einstein famously played the violin. These were individuals carrying immense, world-shifting intellectual burdens. I mean, Churchill was literally leading a nation through a global war. Yet he didn't just sleep all day on his rare days off. No, he focused his brain on mixing colors and painting landscapes. These absolute geniuses deliberately chose complex, highly engaged hobbies rather than opting for passive numbness.
The mechanics behind their habits reveal the core secret we've been talking about. They were relaxing one part of the brain while actively stimulating another part. By shifting gears rather than turning the engine completely off, they were able to return to their intense workday pursuits fresher and sharper than ever. Imagine driving a manual car, okay? Instead of turning the key and just killing the engine entirely, they were simply engaging the clutch, shifting into a completely different gear, and keeping that forward momentum going. They never had to fight through that foggy, dull spirit that passive relaxation always leaves behind.
Let's look at a modern example in Section 4, the unexpected gaming epiphany. Our author Steve Chandler discovered this historical secret quite accidentally in his own life. The story begins so simply, just a standard father-son bonding moment. He sat down to play some computer games with his then 9-year-old son Bobby, and he was doing this entirely just to make his kid happy. He fully expected it to be a completely mindless distraction. But then, he actually encountered the deep complexity of these virtual football, basketball, and hockey games. He suddenly realized he had to read the defense, call plays, and react in real time. It wasn't mindless at all. This led to his profound discovery of the powerful stimulation of recreational thinking. What started as just hanging out on the couch became this deeply restorative, brain-challenging pursuit that unexpectedly left him feeling mentally energized. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Becoming a Player. Henry Ford once famously said, "Thinking is the hardest work we do, which is why so few people ever do it." So, the absolute crucial point here is that true, deep relaxation isn't about avoiding the hard work of thinking altogether. Not at all. It's about changing the type of thinking we are doing. When we stop running from mental engagement, we actually stop the cycle of burnout in its tracks. Because linking thinking to recreation inherently leads to a richer life. When we intentionally find ways to combine mental effort with our downtime, whether that's putting puzzle pieces together, learning a new language, or actively engaging in a really strategic hobby, our lives grow and they blossom. We stop being these passive victims of fatigue. We stop letting the work week drain us entirely only to try and desperately numb out on the weekends. Instead, we use our free time to cultivate a much sharper, much more vibrant version of ourselves. So I want to leave you with a provocative question to chew on. Are you a player in the game of life, or are you just a spectator? Passive relaxation makes you a spectator. You're just watching life happen, feeling dull, bloated, and exhausted on the sidelines. Active relaxation, however, invites you to actually step onto the field, to keep your mind toned, refreshed, and brilliantly engaged with the unexpected. So as you head into your very next block of free time, ask yourself, how are you going to play? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I truly hope this empowers you to fundamentally rethink your downtime. Catch you next time.